out their winners? Are you saying it takes 16 years for them
To find out if you're a winner, yes. So I'm talking about long lead times, incredibly long lead times. It may not be quite 16, but yeah, 14. There's variation here. It partly depends what, for instance, there are some, if you go back to Epogen, the red blood cell stimulant, it's very, very quick to find out whether it's working. You give the patient the Epogen, and you measure, maybe 2 days later, you can measure their red blood before or after red blood cell count. You got the answer. With cancers, depending on how fast growing the cancers are, if they're not treated, it may take you quite a long time to figure out whether it's working. So it's tricky. And then of course all sorts of other things like the degree of effect. If you have a very strong effect relative to placebo, you'll see it sooner. But if it's modest effect, it can take a lot longer to so these trials can vary in length. And the trouble is, it's impossible to design a trial well. It's trial and error, however smart your clinical scientists are. And then clinical scientists also don't like to take risks, which means they screw up the trials by designing them in ways that are too cautious but don't really measure effect. They want to win. They want to keep going. There's a huge agency problem between the scientist and the shareholder. Now, the scientist wants his project to go on forever because it's career, his career security and so forth. Plus, it's his baby. We need to be too cynical. It's his baby. He may have been involved in here, he's with it there. And he's sure that it works, even though that's faith more than reason. Huge fight between the guys who are paying for this and the guys who want to go on doing it. So design a trial so it won't fail. Unfortunately, it won't prove much either, and all that kind of stuff. Tremendous game, fascinating. I mean, it's the most. I've worked in lots and lots of industries. It's the most fascinating industry that I've ever worked in. It's this melding of science and health and money, business that makes it fascinating. But yes, it takes forever, and it costs a huge amount towards the end. If you've got 1,000 to 5,000 patients in the trial, you're spending many, many, many millions each year while that's going on, and then it'll fail. Almost, many of them do. I don't have the percentages on this chart of where they fail. Unfortunately, quite a lot fail here where it's the most expensive. Or they fail here. The FDA doesn't buy it. And if the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, doesn't accept your drug, says you haven't proved safety and efficacy to our satisfaction, and they're not totally capricious, although there's a capriciousness about it. Bam, you come back, you do another trial, but those can be very expensive. And if you're a small company, you can't do it because you don't have any more funds. So fundraising becomes a huge piece of the game if you're a small company. If you're one of the biggies, you're generating enough cash to keep going. Let's skip. I don't know how much time but careers. I thought this slide from the Roche takeover package would be interesting. This is just a not terribly glamorous picture of the Genentech campus. I say that because I think if you were looking at from here on a bright day, many of these buildings would be quite palatial. Now, you're in pretty palatial surroundings too, but Amgen, it's like, they put up a new palace every 2 or 3 years, and they are gorgeous buildings with lovely stone and from marble stairs, it's pretty fancy. Yes.
Are they tearing down the old ones and building it?
No, they tend to expand. They tend to just move. Yeah, no, they don't. Well, they did. They started off with some pretty unimpressive prefab, low-rise, and 2-story type things back in the late 80s, and so those but now gleaming, glossy things. Yeah, you can argue about whether this makes sense. It certainly is attractive. You're looking for brains and talent, right? So you want somewhere that they'll like. They've been in, top universities, which also have pretty nice campuses. So you want to bring them something even fancier. That's the Most of it is just the ego of the CEO, basically. But to give you an idea though of what, there are 180,000 people roughly employed in the industry in the US. What do? You take Genentech's pie, 3,000, just over a quarter in R&D. So that's a very wide range of scientists, and of course some lower level lab tech type people and some administration to be in there. But the science goes from the larger piece of it is the development, the D, and that's the inhuman part, inhuman, that's a lot of doctors. Clinical trials are run by doctors. They may be MD, PhDs. The leaders almost certainly will be, and then a bunch of other PhDs, but biostatisticians, who work the numbers, and a whole lot of other skills. In the R side, very wide range: microbiologists, biochemists, and toxicologists, pharmacokineticists. Worry about how the drug actually comes through the body. How quickly do you urinate it out, things like that, and they have to worry about lots of stuff. So very wide range of specialties in there. Manufacturing about the same size. Now manufacturing, because it's such a sensitive set of processes to make this stuff, and the FDA has to be all over those processes to make sure there are no impurities, because this is going to go into human beings, and to make sure it's a replicable product and all that. The Amgen manufacturing plant for one product would be about the size of this room. We aren't talking, you're not belting out Coca-Cola here. These are little vials of stuff that, that they charge hundreds or thousands of dollars for. But you've got all these people running around because the quality assurance is so sensitive. So you have people checking the checkers and checking the checkers and checking the checkers and all that. It's like a nuclear power plant in the sense of how bureaucratic it has to be in order to maintain quality. So quite a lot of skills there. Bioengineers are in there, and quality specialists and so forth. Commercial is sales and marketing, and then in here you've got people like those patent attorneys. You've got finance, which is very, very, there's so much money that's involved. You've got HR, human resources, other legal and so forth. So that gives you a sense of what the careers are like from an overview. I thought a friend of mine who's done extremely well. I thought I'd just show you his career. He got a degree in microbiology and a master's in genetics from Penn State. Whilst there, he was captured on film by a TV station removing caps of beer with his teeth, and he looks like an absolute thug. So you might look at him and he's a nerd. Well, he's a nerd you wouldn't want to fight with in a dark alley kind of thing. But he's a great guy. He's sort of a cuddly thug, he went straight to Amgen. And spent 17 years there. So Amgen was kind of one of the first to sort of hit success in the late 80s. He must have shown up about 3 years into when they had the first commercial products on, and they had revenues coming in, and they were expanding research. So he started as a research associate, so in the lab. Didn't stay there very long. Had his microbiology and all that. Didn't stay there very long. He moved to finance. What he did in finance, Amgen had money and didn't have any interesting stuff going on in the pipeline. They were trying to acquire